this video we are going to discuss function operations, and with this what we're discussing is we're going to combine functions, whether we're adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. So let's first start if we have the functions of f of x is equal to a negative 3x. We have that g of x is equal to the absolute value of x minus 2, and that we have h of x is equal to 1 over x plus 1. Now, when we talk about function operation, what we're talking about is strictly the four major functions: add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Those are the major function operations that we talk about. There is one other one that we're going to look at in a later video, which is composition. But that one's a little bit by itself, so we'll talk about that one on its own. With addition, subtraction, multiply, divide, you're going to see them written in a couple of different ways. So with function operations, you can see that if we have addition, it can look like this, where I have f plus g of x. That is the exact same thing as saying f of x plus g of x. So I'm saying take f and add it to g. And in this particular case, I'm saying leave the x there. I'm not replacing the x with anything. Now, if I have a number there, let's say I have f plus g of 2, that's telling me to take f of 2 and add it to g of 2. So I'm going to find f of 2, I'm going to find g of 2, and then I'm going to add those to each other. That is really what function operations is doing. It doesn't matter if I'm adding or if I'm subtracting. Let's say I have g minus h of x. That's telling me to take g of x and then subtract h of x. Now, sometimes we get some ugly looking functions, especially if we're going to leave them. But we're just doing operations. Now, if you get this, notice it's a closed circle. That does mean to multiply. An open circle is going to mean something totally different. So this is going to say to take f of x, and then we're going to multiply it by g of x. And then, of course, if we have f divided by g of x, we're going to take our f function and we'll divide it by our g function. So these are our four major operations that we look at. Now, let's look at f plus g of 2. That means to take f of 2 plus g of 2. And I'm going to scoot over just a little bit. So f of 2 would mean I would take negative 3 times 2. And then g of 2 would tell me to take the absolute value of 2 minus 2. And I would add these things together. So negative 3 plus 2 would give me a negative 6. 2 minus 2 would be the absolute value of 0. So I would get negative 6. F plus g of 2 would equal negative 6. I would literally just plug in the 2 for the x values of each individual function. The ones that you have to really pay attention to as far as the order is going to be your subtraction and your division, because it will matter which one's numerator, denominator, which one's first, and which one's second. For example, if I have f minus h of 2, that's saying take f of 2 minus h of 2. So I would have negative 3 times 2. And then for h, I would have 1 over 2 plus 1. And I would be subtracting these two. So I would get negative 6 minus a 1/3. So remember, whenever you're adding and subtracting, you would get common denominators. So I'd get a negative 18 thirds minus 1/3, which would give me a negative 19 thirds. That's if I have f minus h. If I have h minus f of 2, I would end up with a 1/3 minus a negative 6, which would actually give me a 1/3 plus 6. So instead of a negative 19 thirds, I would end up with a positive 19 thirds. So you'll notice it does make a difference as far as which one is in front and which one is second. Do not panic when you start seeing these together. You can separate them if there is not an x here. You just plug in the numbers. If it leaves an x, let's just say that I have m of x being negative x squared plus 4x minus 7. And I have an r of x equaling 3x minus 9. And I want to find r minus m of x. This is going to tell me that I'm going to leave my x in the equation. So I'm going to take my r function, which is 3x minus 9, and I'm going to take my m function, which is a negative x squared plus 4x minus 7, and I'm going to subtract those two. So I'm going to have 3x minus 9 plus an x squared minus 4x plus 7. Because remember, I have to distribute that negative to everything in that second function, which will give me an x squared minus x minus 2. And you'll notice that I put the x squared first, then the x, then the constant. This is what is called descending order. Okay? Make sure that you're starting to get used to writing it in descending order. So if I have an x here, I'm going to have x's left in my final solution. So try some of the function operations, and then let me know if you have any questions.